countdown to economic collapse.
This is Countdown to Economic Collapse, January 20th, 2013. I'm David John Sponheim, running for president under America's Third Party. Again, Obama is blaming the Republicans, expecting to increase the debt limit after he just gave raises to everybody in his administration. Obama is out of control, yet he continues to think that the American people are behind him. 20% of the American people voted for Barack Obama. When you look at the demographics, practically 40% of the people in the country didn't vote that could have voted. So it ends up 1 out of every 5 people voted for Barack Obama. Now that is not a mandate from the American people. And at this time, the Democrats are pushing for gun control on the heels of shootings around the country, which we don't really know what the final outcome of those trials will be. But we are understanding that the Democrats are pushing for gun control when they really should be pushing for budget control. And all the while, the Libor scandal isn't even heard of. I asked people, have you heard about the Libor scandal in the news? Well, no one's hearing about it because that scandal has been covered up by all kinds of mindless, idiotic things that the media pushes, like the length of a submarine foot-long sandwich. Come on. That's what we're supposed to be talking about. We're not supposed to ask the big questions how the major banks around the world have been scraping interest rates off of bank transactions and money handling that leads to billions of dollars wasted. And the very fines and penalties that are charged against these companies are paltry in comparison to the amount of money that these people are making. Now, our country's got this massive class separation, which is something that Barack Obama should be concerned about, but I don't think he really is, because he's in the 1%. He's a multimillionaire who could care less about the average person. Now, we created America's Third Party because we believe that we're getting the raw end of the deal. All that TARP money, $3 trillion, went out to the big banks, and still to this day, the Federal Reserve continues to write printed money checks after printed money checks to big banks, mortgage-backed securities, and bailouts all across the nation. Now, this isn't going to help our country. It's going to keep these too-big-to-fail companies going, trickling along. Companies that shouldn't even be reporting profits are lying about their profits, like Citigroup.
So we can measure the future of our economy by how big corporations are doing. Well, Citigroup isn't doing too well. Citigroup blames gloomy earnings on fiscal cliff, but analysts are unconvinced. The top management in Citigroup gave a dour view Thursday on the path the U.S. economy would take in 2013, saying it wasn't sure that positive trends in employment and mortgage landscape were sustainable. Now, banks are generally allowed by their accountants to siphon off a portion of their loan loss reserves, essentially a pot of money the bank holds that allows it to absorb defaults in its credit portfolio. Well, it turns out Citigroup was able to move between $600 million and $1 billion each quarter, counting that amount as pure profit in the previous 5 quarters. And by comparison, it was only able to take into contribution of $86 million from that line item this time around.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Remember the countrywide savings debacle? Bank of America picked up the debt note for that company, and they pretended like everything was okay, but they're getting hit hard in a financial restructuring so that financial companies and mortgage companies are going to have to pay back the borrowers that they screwed.
It turns out Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley are now out of the mortgage servicing business. With a $557 million settlement, this agreement covers more than 220,000 borrowers whose homes were in foreclosure in 2009 and 2010 and whose mortgages were serviced by the 2 banks' former subsidiaries. It follows the $8.5 billion settlement announced last week by the Fed with 10 other banks over foreclosure issues.
But even that's not enough. This is like sweeping the ocean back with a broom. Our country is now faced with ever bigger debts, and Barack Obama's answer to this is to raise the debt limit? This is absurd. The fiscal cliff deal was ridiculous. They knew all along they were going to sign the deal. They knew all along that they had all these pork barrel spending options inside the deal, and you can see that in our previous video. We are of the belief that this incredible enlargement of the debt is a game. that Ben Bernanke, the Federal Reserve, and Barack Obama and his cronies, the two-party system, are actually playing a game on the American people. The game is mad rush to the end. Bankrupt the entire nation for the next 4 more years, suck every single dollar of credit out of our country, drop our credit rating to 1 star across the board, and then abandon ship. I wouldn't doubt that the Federal Reserve decides to close down in a few years, simply because they've amassed such a large debt that they won't be able to handle the interest on their debt. And that is exactly what our country's dealing with right now. We cannot handle the interest on our debt, and we aren't able to deal with the excessive spending of Barack Obama. So if you're a person who voted for Barack Obama thinking that in the next 4 years he's bound to change what George Bush did, you're sorely mistaken. He hasn't shown that he's changed anything, and 4 more years of nothing equals nothing. And that
I would be remiss in not mentioning the good news. This from Bloomberg. U.S. stocks rise for 3rd week amid corporate earnings. U.S. stocks are driving benchmark indexes to 5-year highs as earnings from companies like General Electric, Goldman Sachs beat estimates and debt limit talks progressed. Energy, industrial, and consumer companies climbed the most among the 10 groups in S&P 500s. GE rallied 4.3%, and a gauge of homebuilders rose to the highest level since 2007 amid better-than-expected housing data. Morgan Stanley jumped 11% after reaching profit margin targets 6 months ahead of schedule. And Dell Inc. surged 18% and reports it's in buyout talks. Bank of America and Intel were the big losers. They sank at least 3.4% on disappointing results.
back up. Did I say nothing? I meant minus $6 trillion. That's expected from Barack Obama's overspending of $1.5 trillion per year. That's expected. So we will expect he will overspend by $6 trillion. So we will be $6 trillion more in debt at the end of these 4 years coming up.
And bad predictions for the future of energy in America. This from the Christian Science Monitor. Will oil troubles push the U.S. into a severe recession? Well, one analyst believes that high oil prices and continued oil problems around the world will likely push the U.S. economy into a severe recession by the end of 2013. He goes on to say that there are 5 reasons for this. High oil prices are a major cause of the United States federal government's current financial problems. 2, the United States and world's oil problems have not been resolved. 3, a cutback in discretionary spending is likely. U.S. workers are already struggling with wages that are not rising as fast as the GDP. And 4, the size of our current financial problems, both in terms of U.S. government income, outgo imbalance, and debt level, is extremely large. And he goes on to say the 5th reason is that this is characteristic of every single economic collapse dating back hundreds of years.
So that's not a legacy of change, that's a legacy of insanity, of sabotaging our economy, of turning our nation into a debtor nation when we should be leading the world in brand new technologies. What's going on? Is Barack Obama promising things to his own cronies to get reelected and then delivering nothing? Of course he is. That's what many politicians do. They say they're going to do something and then they just feed the people that paid their reelection campaign. Well, at America's Third Party, we don't want to do that. We actually are instigating bylaws within our own organization to prevent that from happening, from taking money and doing favors for people for those donations. That will not happen under the future government. We will actually work toward a centrist resolution between the two parties, where we can reach out to both sides and come up with ideas that will at least appease them halfway, and we can move forward. We're not going to give everybody what they want. The bills that I sign in front of my desk will be limited to 100 pages. We will streamline the way government is currently operating. We want to make sure that certain wasteful programs are red tagged for abuse, and we'll deal with Congress directly, one-on-one. Any congressman that stands in the way of cutting certain parts of the budget will be facing C-SPAN cameras and a reality show where the president integrates the ideas of the American people in a live poll that goes right into the office of the congressman who's wasting that money. So you're going to want a very transparent president, and I will talk to you every single day from a chat room, 9 o'clock in the morning, from the whitehouse.gov site. We'll have a morning show where we can talk to everybody about what kind of activities are going on in the day and what kind of huge challenges we're going to be facing and how we're going to solve the problems that are currently affecting the nation. Now, this kind of openness and transparency is what you expected from Barack Obama, and I will deliver on that.